Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Tonight is going to be very informal. We are going to have a wonderful chat with a gentleman that I am getting to know, Mr. George Davis, the CEO of TEDCO. George epitomizes, in my opinion, what it means to be a founder, entrepreneur, investor, and leader of companies. His entrepreneurial journey spans more than 30 years of multiple successes in building, managing, and investing in biotech, IT, and software companies, from startup through multiple successful exits, including having raised more than $1.5 billion in capital for his ventures and for others. He actually started his working world in the corporate environment with Westinghouse, Northrop Grumman, and had a great run with them, where he was in charge of enterprise management systems, advanced military electronic development, and productions projects. Then he began his entrepreneurial journey by assuming the presidency and vice chairmanship of a company called Aether Systems. He grew that to the point where they had a very successful IPO. From there, he's played very strategic roles in companies such as Avantech Solutions, Rand Worldwide, the investment firm of Gamma 3, Gemstone Biotherapeutics, and finally, in June of 2017, George was selected and elected as the CEO of this organization, TEDCO. And George has his Bachelor of Science in Business and Economics from Bethany College. And there was a quote that I really found interesting about George, and it was in the Technically Baltimore's article announcing George's selection, and that is that Newt Fowler, the CEO or the chairman of TEDCO, chairman of the board, was quoted as saying, "George is the entrepreneur's entrepreneur." So, that having been said, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce George.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I thought I had a cool job till I heard your job description.
I'm sorry?
I thought I had a cool job till I heard what you said.
Oh. What do I do?
So we're trying to figure it out.
Well, first of all, I want to again thank TEDCO, thank you, thank John, thank Tammy, thank the entire team for having been with Startup Grind from day one. And I am really looking forward to continuing to work with all of you to make even more resources available for our region. So let's start and kind of walk through your career. You went, as you told me, you started right out of school with Westinghouse in a corporate world, and you had a couple of pretty interesting stories about what you did there. Would you mind sharing them with us?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a Maryland guy, so I grew up in Kingsville, Maryland, actually Arbutus. Grew up with Governor Bob Ehrlich, actually. Played all together as kids. Went away to school out in West Virginia, came back, and my dad got me a job at Westinghouse. My dad worked there. So that was in 1980. I was 12 years old. Fascinating place to work. You know, think about, if you're old enough to remember, the defense sector was very interesting back in the 80s. And really working on some extremely advanced projects. Probably working with some of the smartest people, even to this day, I've ever worked with. Particularly from a system engineering perspective. You know, creating algorithms for fire control radars for F-16s. And, I remember back then, my partner, Dave Morris, who became my partner at Aether, we worked on a project back in the mid-late 80s. That's today the F-22 fighter. So, we worked with the team building out the avionics suite for that back then. So to see the timeline and the process of evolving those types of technologies is pretty phenomenal. And I worked my way up, so I wasn't an engineer, which was unique to become a program manager at Westinghouse. I was fortunate enough to find a mentor, a gentleman by the name of Emmett Wheeler, who was a big division manager. He said, "You want to be a program manager, go learn how to build radars." So he took me down on the factory floor and met the people down there. I watched and I learned and figured it out. So I worked with a lot of system engineering, software engineering, mechanical, electrical. Really fascinating place. In the last 2 years there, I was offered a position to head up a whole group that managed U.S. Postal Service business. So we actually built our consortium equipment, optical machines, stamp machines, and I landed a large mobile contract to look at tracking postal vehicles. This was back in the 90s. And that led me back to Dave Morris, who had left Westinghouse, he was a friend of mine, and started a small company called NextGen that was looking in the mid-90s at very early days of mobile wireless access. So that's how we connected and carried forward. So keep going?
Yeah.
Keep going. So I jumped ship with him and went with my first startup. I wasn't a kid, I was 40 years old. We had a pretty senior group of individuals with some good experience, hired a good engineering team, and we were right in the middle of something called the .com. So it was a pretty exciting time. We built some very heavy mobile and wireless applications. We were trying to do what you see today back in the 90s with really archaic networks and products. We were putting mobile products on Palm Pilots, with modems and Microsoft CE devices. But we learned that we had a middleware platform that we wanted to sell, but we realized we had to build applications. So we focused in the financial sector, transportation sector, and built some pretty exciting applications. We were one of the first companies out there to provide real-time data in a financial perspective for trading and access information with Reuters to the financial community. We won marquee customers, so we tried to create value, right? So we raised probably 10, 12 million of capital for the company, pre-IPO, and we were trying to build valuation points. So how do we create value? Get marquee customers, right? Get some revenue. So we built some pretty cool apps. We found some marquee customers, and we raised enough money to move us towards an IPO. Tell you a little war story. For how many people out here are running a startup and trying to raise money? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. I remember back in the 90s, Dave and I were in New York trying to raise some money. We were real low, right? Trying to figure out how to make payroll the next month. We had about 15 employees. And it gets pretty nervous, and we're walking around New York, banging on doors, and we just couldn't seem to get anybody to say yes, So we were pretty frustrated. So what do? Well, we went and drank a lot of Heinekens. We went to a place called the Al Bar up in New York City, pretty famous place, and drank quite a few of them. Got up the next morning, and someone had set up a meeting for us with a head of marketing for Reuters America, pretty big outfit. And we had a Reuters feed, we were doing financial data, so we went to we were invited to this thing called Reuters World to meet this woman, Sarah Dunn. I'll remember her forever. And we were walking up the street about 9 in the morning, a little hungover, a little beat up. Do we go or do we go home? It's been a zero trip. Go to the train, go to Reuters World. Go to the train, go to Reuters World. I said, over here, let's go. So we went in, had 10 minutes with this woman. Gave her a demonstration of our applications, and she was pretty intrigued because she saw her data coming out on this mobile product. And she said, I don't have a lot of time, can you come back next week and see me? Went home, went back to New York the following week, struck a deal with Reuters and 3Com and Palm Computing, and 6 months later they invested $3 million in our company. Palm invested $2 million, we were on our way. So opportunity, when it presents itself, go for it, is the message there, So that window opened and we got it. We then took the company public. I remember 1999, Dave called me, it was 4th of July. I was having a little picnic with my family, and he called and said, we gotta go public. I said, I don't think we're quite ready. Isn't that, this .com thing isn't gonna last. Capital's there, we got marquee customers, we got value. So we found a way to go public. We ended up going public with Merrill Lynch, which was unique at that time to go with Merrill Lynch. Everybody was going Piper Jaffray and Jeffries and all these companies. But Merrill Lynch, the head of capital markets, was a fraternity brother of mine. Connections, right? Bobby McCann, he ended up becoming the head of private wealth management for Merrill Lynch, and he's now the chairman of UBS Americas. So good friend we got to have. But we went public. We went out there, crazy ride, jumping on airplanes, traveling all over the country for 2 weeks. To show you how crazy it was back then, we were going around to go public. It turned out that other companies going public at the same time, and in 1999 there was a lot of companies going public. They always seem to be in a trend before us and after us, going to the same places, going to the same banks. And in front of us was Vince McMahon, Worldwide Wrestling Federation. That was amazing. And here we are, a tech company following him around the country. And you know who was behind us? Martha Stewart. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing trilogy, you know, wrestling, Martha, and us in the middle. But a really fascinating experience. It was a crazy world. You know, we'd give 10 to 12 presentations a day. They were half hour. You kind of forgot what you were saying by the 10th one. You just got through it. But we were very successful. We raised over $120 million. We went public in October of '99 at $14 a share. And 4 months later, our stock was trading at $300 a share.
Wow.
Our company was valued at $6 billion, and we were doing about $50 million in sales. That's how insane the world was. But David Orris called me again. I think I was at another picnic, and he said, you know, we got to go do a secondary. I said, you're completely out of your mind. He said, I'm telling you, this isn't going to happen. The capital's there. Let's go get it. So we talked to the bank, and they said, we're game. Let's go do it. So we went back out on the road, all over not just the U.S. We went to Europe. I remember in one part of that trip, in 2 days, we went from London to Frankfurt to Milan, Italy, to Stockholm. But we raised about $1.5 billion at $200 a share. I remember the last leg of that journey, we were at Janus out in Denver. And they had been following us, but they weren't in the early round. And we walked in, they said, we want to buy the entire secondary. I said, well, that's not going to happen. You know, but they bought like 10% at $200 a share. This was in March of 2000. 2 weeks later, the markets collapsed. I mean, totally collapsed. Our stock went from $200 a share to $50 a share in about 60 days. It was a really tough run. We had captured cash, so we had a lot of cash, but the markets were upheaval. It was crazy. We were trying to justify market cap by buying companies and bolting them on. It was really an insane period for a couple of years, but we built some pretty good divisions. And then the board, which I was a member of, decided it was best to liquidate the divisions and move on to some different things. So we sold them off. Transportation sector, financial sector, different companies. Happy to report there's a lot of Aether people working across the country, just not under Aether anymore. We were able to cash out a little bit of money during that secondary offering. I was a little bit, Dave was a lot. Became very wealthy with that. And then I moved on, I did some consulting, and I was recruited to run a software and services company called Avitech, which resold Autodesk products across the country. So we had Salesforce in 50 different states and engineering services. It was a really tough model. They were public, and they shouldn't have been. You know, they were doing about 60 million in sales. Really hard to create value for your stockholder as a reseller. You know, we were just kind of rolling it up and make it bigger. So I figured generate a lot of cash and make it bigger. So we skinnied it down and made it bigger, and we're able to merge it with a company out of Canada called Rand, and that's still here in Owens Mills, Maryland. One story that I'll talk about there that was one of the most successful things I ever did in business. I was running Avitech in 2008. You guys remember what happened? And we were in real trouble. My CFO came in and he closed the door. Larry was like, he said, we're in trouble. I mean, sales were just plummeting. You know, we were all about near-term sales and licensing. I said, how bad is it? He goes, if we don't do something quick, we might be out of business in 3 or 4 months. So we had, about 100 some employees trying to figure out what to do. We whiteboarded it. What do we got to do? The only thing we're not going to generate more sales, so we got to cut costs. So how do you get there? And the last thing what I wanted to do was lay people off. You know, it was tough times. So we came up with a plan, and I presented it to all of Avitech across the country. I said, here's what we got to do. We have a choice. We can get rid of quite a few people, or we can take a 10% cut across the board in salary. And I said, management will take 20%. What do you want to do? I think that, and everybody voted to do that. It was tough on a lot of people, but what we did was we committed to them that we would garnish that loss, and we would account for it over time. And when we returned to profitability, we would pay it back. Nobody believed we'd do it. And about less than a year later, we were able to do that. And one of the best days of my life was to send that check out to everybody. And you talk about building a team and strength, but it just felt really good to do that. Nobody got laid off. We kept, everybody bid it for about 9 or 10 months, and we were able to garnish your back. It's one of the best things I've ever done in business, to be able to keep the team together like that. I did that, merged it with RAND, which I probably would have run for a while, but I took a time out to go learn about life sciences by becoming a cancer patient. So I was diagnosed with cancer in 2009 and went off the grid for longer than I thought I would. It was a tough run for a couple of years. Learned a lot of perspective during that process that I carry with me today. But I got through it, and cancer is expensive. I'm off the grid for 3 or 4 years, need to get back to work. I got back with Dave Loris and we started Gamma 3, which was a small fund. We raised about $6 million with some partners in New York, focused on early stage investing in the Baltimore area. We saw, just like everybody, we'll talk about this tonight, I'm sure, but you look around Maryland and you just see this plethora of assets, and particularly on the research side. Yet, we're pretty far down the list on access to venture capital and really creating big strong businesses. So what's missing? We said, well, there's some capital missing, there's venture capital. So we decided to take a risk and go early. We were able to cherry pick. We cut some pretty good deals with Hopkins in Maryland. We invested in 7 companies, 6 of them were life science, 1 was cyber. And happy to report they're all doing good. This was in 2012, 13. Some of the biotech companies I actually stepped in and ran for a while, including Gemstone. Learned a lot working with PhDs about taking a product from lab to bedside and how hard it is and how much capital you need to do it. But it's been a really cool experience, and all those companies are doing really well. Some of those companies are Terbium Labs, who actually started that company, Danny Rogers, a real nice cyber play. PGDX down in Kent, which is about to close on a Series B of $110 million, so we did pretty good with that investment. Gemstone, Pap Genes, really cool companies in Nora. And we crossed the gamut. We started some of them, and some of them we tagged along. And then I was approached by some contemporaries in the space to consider this position at TEDCO. And I really wasn't quite familiar with TEDCO, which in itself sent a little bit of message to me about branding, right? So, but I heard nothing but good things. I just didn't quite know what it was. So I peeled the onion. I had some time with John Wassilison, and I looked and I said, this is a pretty cool platform. Somebody 20 years ago, we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary next year, had the wherewithal down in Annapolis to think about putting some cash and capital into moving things, tech transfer from the research side to the commercial side. And over the years, TEDCO has added programs, they've bolted on different grants we manage and funds to be what it is today, which is an amalgamation of a lot of different projects and programs that have been really contributing to Maryland ecosystem quite heavily over the years, touching a lot of businesses, creating a lot of opportunity. So my mission is pretty simple. How do I make it sure it's relevant for the next 20 years? And when I came in here, the first thing I said to the team was, we're too small. If you trust that nothing creates economic gain and job creation like the creation of new business, why do we only get these small buckets of money every year? And how do we make it bigger? So what we have today at TEDCO is a lot of pools of capital. We manage the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund to the tune of $8-9 million a year, which is happily report starting to move more to funding actual companies, not just the research institutions. That's the model there. Regenerative medicine is huge, it's big. As a cancer survivor, I can't wait for it. It's going to solve our problems, and we need to invest in it. We manage the MII fund, which you're all familiar with, and it's been very successful from a research perspective. And we're seeing more and more companies flow through in that end. Then we manage a series of government grants and programs. We manage a series of seed funds. I kind of put them all into one bucket. But is in TCF, Life Science Fund, Cyber Fund, Gap Fund, $6 million a year. And then we have the Maryland Venture Fund, which is a $100 million asset, which is a great platform. And we've merged all that together. So all the funds are under Andy Jones now. And the team's really working in sync to make sure we have an investment philosophy early on that carries all the way through to C-level funding. And that's going well. We're happy to report we just got $25 million in new power from the Maryland Pension Fund. So the legislative office dictated to the pension fund, why don't you invest more of that $40 billion fund in Maryland, right? So they peeled off $20 million, $25 million to start, and we won that. So we just got access to that. It's a new fund, Maryland Innovation Opportunity Fund. And we've already warehoused a couple of really cool deals in that space. So we're moving that needle. We're evolving a new suite of what I call gateway services. So we want to really develop and deploy world-class programs in the areas of training and mentoring and development. I think TEDCO's done a fairly good job in that space, but not good enough. So we got to innovate, we got to be better, we got to build better programs, we got to partner. One thing I'm really pushing for, and TEDCO is responding very well, is to work well with others. Let's go find the best in breed and brand and partner with them, so anybody that comes to us, we can point to the right resources. So watch for us to be rolling out new projects and programs next year in that space, and you'll notice they'll be partnering with others to really grow the model and leverage that. The Maryland ecosystem is unique, and if I may, there's another initiative underway that the governor initiated this past May called Excel Maryland. And Excel Maryland was all about looking at how do we become preeminent in Maryland, particularly in life sciences and cyber or advanced data sciences, so to speak. Pretty big call, pretty good mission. But there was a study conducted that looked at what we have here. And just like we all know, more than any place in the country, we garnish this research money. Hopkins, APL, Maryland, the labs, billions of dollars a year spent. Yet we're like 26 on the list on venture capital access. So how do we close that gap? So a study was done, and it said, one thing you have here is you don't really have an innovation ecosystem. You have more of a fragmented cluster of siloed things, all trying to do the right thing, but they're all over the place. They're not really marching down the same highway together. So it's a lot of capital being deployed in nonprofits, in state-funded opportunities, in federal opportunities, in private institutions. How do we coalesce all that and put it under an umbrella of real good thought leadership to more intelligently allocate the capital? Whether it's investment funds or infrastructure funds or training and mentoring funds, whether it's internship funds, workforce development, all of those things need to play into an ecosystem. And so I'm part of that team, and we're working on phase 2 now to kind of build that platform with the message to the legislators, and it's my message to the government people is, you don't legislate an ecosystem. You legislate an environment that helps one grow and evolve. So maybe sometimes you just get out of the way. I don't know. But we want, we have a new mission, and that mission is, and I borrowed from one of your last fireside chat people, Ron Gula. How do we build 10 tunnels? Mm-hmm. What a great message. TEDCO we have to go as wide as we can, but we got to go deep. We got to gold star businesses and lift them up and create this. You do that, that's 5,000 jobs. So some great success stories coming down the path. We're seeing some really good opportunities across the space. I'll mention one. This PGDX is a perfect example in the life science space of what we need to do here. We haven't had a big exit in Maryland since Menominee, 12 years ago. Venture capital sees that, right? They look for winners. They want to make money. So how do we find more winners with better exits? And you start to develop an ecosystem around that. PGDX, a company that I invested in with Gamma 3 back in 2013. Unfortunately, I knew one of the founders. He was my oncologist, Louis Diaz, and Victor Vascol. Advanced genome sequencing, really powerful stuff in the cancer world. And they've got a really cool model baked out of Bert Erdelstein's labs at Hopkins, so tens of millions have gone into this. They started with their own credit cards, right? Raised some angel funding. We were one of them, Able Foundation, a couple others in Baltimore. They started generating some revenue, and we talked to them about, you got to go big. You guys can go big. And they were nervous about dilution and giving up control, right? The typical thing with the founders. But we knew they had the opportunity because they're Compass Foundation Medicine, a $1 billion exit up in Boston. We said, you guys, you got to bring in some venture people here. And they were nervous about it because it's the only way to get there. And you're going to get diluted. But either way, you're going to be very rich men, right? You really are. But how do we create something bigger and better? So they agreed to that. I had the good fortune of having contacted NEA, Justin Klein, who I brought up and introduced to them, and he got excited and did their Series A. They raised $22 million, backed by NEA, great brand. Justin then kind of took it, right, with the founders and said, we got to find a C-level exec team to run this thing. And they were willing to do that, so he recruited an exec team from outside of Maryland, from Roche and GE Healthcare, some real prominent names who were willing to come here and build this company. They're in Canton. They're going to close on a $110 million Series B in a couple weeks, including a big strategic partner. They've hired 100 people this year. They're building out new lab space down there. That's going to be a $1 billion exit. There's our unicorn, you know? It's because it's going to be valued at $300 million when we close the round. How do we do 2 or 3 of them and start to cluster around that, technologies and opportunities around that is the mission. So we're trying, what I'm trying to do with TEDCO with the team, it's not me, it's us, is just make it bigger and better. It's already pretty cool, you know, and it's got a great group of people working here. How do we just make it bigger and better? And I think the way to do that is to partner and to work well with others and bring things into play. There's a lot of great things going on around here. Just in these zip codes, you know, I was talking with the Howard County development people the other day about how do we leverage what's going on in this arena. You know, Tracy's getting ready to move her squad over here down the street, so we got to, you know, we're next door, we got to make sure they're successful, right? It's part of our brand too. But you go down to Fulton, and you got Data Tribe down there, right? A nice exclusive thing, really lifting up some big winners. That should be a place people want to aspire to get into. You come up 95, you got BW Tech, you know, doing all this cyber work with Grumman and outsourcing. You come over here, you got the incubator, you got the mothership upstairs, who's going to move downtown Columbia. And they are the mothership, right? How do we build around that? So how do we build a series of incubators, accelerators, workspaces around this whole concept of, I love cyber, and we got to go cyber, but we also got to be careful. You know, we're talking about more advanced data sciences and security, because there's a lot of things that can spin out of that and grow. But there's no doubt Maryland has the ability to be #1 in cyber. That's Stacy over there, she knows, you know. And right now we are, you know, but man, you'll lose it because they're coming in hard and taking people out of here. You know, Silicon Valley's in here. That guy Bob Ackerman came and started what he's doing down there, and we're doing a lot more investing. But we'll lose it if we're not careful. So we got to coalesce around it. At the end of the day, TEDCO, and I think everybody in the ecosystem, has to do one thing in common, and you said it earlier, and that's put you startups, you innovators, at the center of our universe. It's not about us, it's about you. When we talk about an ecosystem, we're not in the middle. TEDCO's not in the middle of that, it's you. How do we all coalesce assets around that to give you the tools you need to be successful? Because if you become great, we will all win. That's our mission, it's clear and simple. I've got the coolest job in the world. You know, our job is to foster innovation and entrepreneurship across Maryland. And I'm touching everywhere. You know, I'm in Cumberland one day, Southern Maryland the next, Eastern Shore the next, and I'm seeing innovation everywhere. I went down to Pax River. I hadn't been down to Southern Maryland in 20 years. And I went down to St. Mary's County at the airport and did a ribbon cutting with the governor to open up a new incubator down there. What a great concept. They got federal money, so Steady Hoyer got federal money to Pax River to outsource the development of an incubator to get outside the fence. TEDCO managed that for them, found a team putting it. They put $3 million into that, including like a couple years of operational costs. Beautiful incubator right at the airport, and you walk out back, you open the door and it's a hangar. So it's all about autonomous systems, right? It's all focused on a cluster of that type of technology. Really exciting. So I don't know if there's any place in the country where there's an incubator that's hooked up to a hangar, right? And autonomous doesn't just mean air, it's land and sea vehicles. But really exciting stuff. And as I told the people down there, I said, you know, 3 years from now we want to see cool drones flying out here, but we want to see great companies flying out here. You know, great economy. So great things all over Maryland. We're ready to help here. There is something for an ecosystem development around geographical density. It's real. When you look around the world, the country, it happens that way. So we got to leverage that in the areas that we're in, whether it's Frederick or whether it's here or whether it's Baltimore, obviously Montgomery County and everything in between. But you know, we got to find these clusters and build this out. And I see it, and it's happening. Maryland is really innovation ready. We just got to give it the fuel to make it successful and make you guys great. So I'll take a breath.
One of the things that came up recently is the initiative down in Annapolis with Ryan Sears and the Founder Track,
Yep.
and I believe that you hosted a launch party or a launch event up here. Can you share with us a little bit about what that initiative is and what's going on down in Annapolis?
No, because I'm not that familiar with it.
Oh, okay.
Who's here from TEDCO that can talk about that?
Founder Track?
Yeah, tell us what's going on, Joe.
Yeah, so Founder Track has done a really good job. They sourced a bunch of companies, some from our own portfolio, some from across the country. They have a company coming in from Georgia. Andrew's really close with the team as well. But they're doing this really unique model called the Sherpa model, where all these companies get their own personal mentor. They really get to spend time one-on-one every week. They get to check in at least 1 hour a day with this mentor to really push them to the next level. And at the same time, they have all these workshops that can really help them accelerate and sharpen their business, different aspects. And it goes through the life cycle of the business. Starting it, nailing down your market and ideation, and then moving towards generating revenue and how to lock down customers. So it's going to be a really good program. A lot of really interesting.
By the way,
companies.
this is new guy.
Yeah.
This is new guy.
How's it going?
He's actually newer than me. Not by much though.
Like 2
Good
months.
job, Joe. Glad to have you on board.
So let me ask you this. In your career, both from a corporate perspective, as an entrepreneur and investor, it's wonderful to have the successes. What about the failures?
Yeah.
What about the worries, the stresses, the things that didn't go right? Can you share with us the flip side of all that success?
Yeah, well, I had a couple dogs I was involved with that just didn't make it, and it's hard. It's hard to swallow. It's hard. It's hard to grasp the fact that it's not going to make it, but you have to. If being an entrepreneur and an innovator in the world, first of all, you got to get used to a couple of things. You got to get used to the word no, because it's going to be thrown at you probably not. And if you don't have thick skin and hang in there, you're in the wrong field. Because it's just really tough to raise money to get what you need to be able to think your idea is the best and not have other people believe in it right away is a really hard thing to do. I learned more on the downside businesses than I did on the upside. Even AFA, was raised a lot of money, but it was a tough sell after the markets collapsed where we were. I mean, we were burning tens of millions of dollars a quarter, and all of a sudden our investors who were growth investors and value investors woke up one day and they were value investors. They wanted us to be profitable. I said that wasn't the model. That's not what we created to do. So there's a lot of pressure being put on us from the stock market. And in retrospect, I learned you can't let that drive your business. If at the end of the day, if you build a great business, if you build winners, everybody will succeed and capital will find it. I do tell people that a lot, that capital has an uncanny ability to find winners. It really does. You just got to hang in there and you got to fight and push. But I've been there. I know how hard it is, and it's not fun. I've been in a situation where we've had to lay off. At one time, we had to lay off like 300 people. And rather than hide the office, I went out there and helped people move and talk to them, and I learned a lot through that process. That people understood, that people were compassionate and cared. It's just really hard stuff to do. But it's all part of the process. It's all part of the growing process. And I learned a lot from those downsides that I carry with me today. Because hard times are going to come. They're just, a lot of times not in your control. Having someone at the wheel who's been through it adds a lot of value. So it may not be you, but having an advisor or a partner or a mentor who's been through hard times can be really invaluable. I always tell a lot of the young startups and young men and women who are starting companies, one of the first things you do is find that older person that you can go to who's been through these things before, to just ask basic questions. How am I doing? What am I doing? Know where all your pennies are going. Know the basics of your business, because if you don't, you'll fail. If you don't understand where your cash is going, your business won't last. If you don't understand and really help understand and portray the market you're going into, you'll never make it, you'll lose. You know, we see a lot of things here, and I see a lot of things over my career where people don't understand those things. They're not going to get my money, you know. We have a lot of scientists that show up here from Hopkins and Maryland, and they think they're doing a science project. And I said, that's not investing. You know, that's research money. We're not philanthropists. It has an I. It's called investment. You know, so you got to understand the business model. If you don't understand QuickBooks, go figure it out. Get somebody to do it. Understand a balance sheet and an income statement. If you don't get those things, you're not a business person. You're not running a business. And without those things, you'll fail. You know, innovation and entrepreneurship are interesting words. You know, innovation is the creation of something new, and entrepreneurship is moving that thing to a product or a solution that, at the end of the day, garnishes profits, right? And value to some consumer. So to get there, you got to understand all those things. And life sciences is tough. You know, I see people raising money, looking for 100K to start a life science company. I said, you're out of your mind. You can't do it. You know, you got to think about $500,000 to $1 million to really start a biotech company, not necessarily health tech or things like that. But, cyber and applications are a little different, but you got to understand what it's really going to take to move the needle, and you got to know what creates value. I always talk to you about, you know, what's your timeline, how you're creating value. In some cases, it's easy. You're going to get an FDA approval, or you're going to get some clinical trial done. You know, they're natural things. In the IT world, you know, garnishing a customer, getting something approved, finding a partnership, a strategic partner. And on that subject, one thing that we're trying to do at TEDCO and work with partners is to do a better job of connecting the innovation world to the corporate world in Maryland. We don't eat what we make here very well, and we got to do a better job of that. So we're working with we want to work with every, there's a lot of players doing that, trying to help in that space. CAMI's doing that, you know, Tech Council's doing that, Commerce is doing that. We want to work with all to make sure our portfolio companies, innovation companies, access to that channel. And I'll give you an example of a real example that I had with TEDCO. Okay, so when I was running this one company, Gemstone, we were raising money. We ended up raising about $4 million. They're doing pretty good. But I had a lot of people tell me no, right? And TEDCO was one of them. People would come to TEDCO, and TEDCO said, you guys know what you're doing out here. Well, it wasn't me, actually, it was the team. Because if I was here, we'd probably got it. But anyway, didn't get the money, and that was the end of the conversation. Okay, you know, whatever, we found our money, we did our things. But I realized running this little biotech company was focused on wound care solutions. It had a biosynthetic solution for skin replacement products and this repurposed drug to attack biologic deficiencies of diabetic foot ulcers. A really big, huge market. It's kind of ugly market. Everybody wants to touch it. It's been old and staunch. So I said, you know, trying to be a one or two trick pony here is going to be really difficult to build a big business. So I got to find a strategic partner. So I reached out across the country with some of my board members and talked to some of the big players. In that space, there's companies like Integra, Smith & Nephew, Organogenesis up in Boston. Nobody wanted anything to do with us. We're just too early. You know, wait till you prove it out. We're preclinical. You know, we're doing animal trials. We're working on pigs. You know, they want to see it on humans. But I realized there were two wound care or regenerative medicine companies in Maryland. And then I realized they're right across the street. One is Osiris, and one is ACell up the street. So I found my way to them, ended up talking to ACell more, and they're still in discussions with that company about doing a term sheet to be their innovation partner to move forward. They're like a $100 million company. So I circled back with some tech, and I said, when you said no, wouldn't it have been cool if you said no, but you want to meet these guys from ACell across the street? So we got to do more of that. We got to make, and that's a big ask. I mean, that's a big ask to think that we can connect everybody, right? We don't have the manpower and bandwidth to do that, but working with Stacy, we can do that. Working with Commerce, we can do that. And we actually have engaged with Commerce. Steve Apple's running a project with Commerce to connect us to big players where we can coalesce, you know, based on their technology roadmap, whatever it might be. I mean, one example is very recently, about 10 companies you take over to Northrop State? Something like that, you know? So find what a roadmap of a Northrop or a McCormick or you know, a Lockheed or Under Armour, whatever they might be looking for in the technology front. You got to find good businesses and bring them some gold stars. If you show up with the wrong stuff, we'll never ask you back. But put our companies in front of them, start to make connections, because from a development perspective of a startup, nothing's more powerful than that strategic partnership, either as a customer or an investor or a partner. So we want to do a lot more of that. So look for us to be rolling out some of those projects next year.
Thank you, sir. Very much. I want to take 1 minute, and I do this with every fireside chat yet, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
With a question. Hey, you're standing on the surface of the earth. You walk 1 mile south, 1 mile west, and 1 mile north. You end up exactly where you started. Where are you?
You know, if the intent of your question is trying to figure out where I think we're going with this, somebody asked me, Dave, where's TEDCO going to be 5 years from now? And I have been doing just what you said in my car, by the way, in Maryland. But we don't, where I want to be 5 years is not where we are right now. Okay, not that we're in a bad place. We're in a pretty good place. We touch a lot of things. But 5 years from now, I want TEDCO, or whatever we call it, 5 years from now. Because maybe we call it something different, right? Involving a brand and awareness and Excel and what's going on. I want it to truly be recognized as a real friend of the startup and the innovator, and an advocate and a resource pool that gets it what it needs, whether we can give it to you or not. So you come to TEDCO, most people come to TEDCO for money. Can't give everybody money, right? We just have limited amounts of capital. But if you do get money, I want to give you a box of products that are really valuable with that money. So we add real value. If you don't get money, I still want to give you a box of products that adds value to help direct you, to assess you, to train you, to mentor you, to tie you with other sources of capital, to be a friend, to do that. And sometimes that friend is to tell you twice, it ain't working. You know? Have the wherewithal to know that, because that's important too. So I want TEDCO to be recognized as a real hub of innovation and entrepreneurship and a go-to place for entrepreneurs and innovators. To know that you're going to get it when you come here. It may not be in this room. It may be connecting you to somewhere else. But we're going to do that. And the team's really working hard on starting to pull together this concierge, we call it, of services that we're going to start rolling out next year that connects people. So as an entrepreneur, I know what you need, because I've been there. You need cash, and you need to be connected. And we're going to do both of those things.
Okay. You still haven't answered my question. Standing on the surface of the earth, you walk 1 mile south, you walk 1 mile west, and you walk 1 mile north, and you end up exactly at the same spot. Where on earth are you?
I don't know. North Pole.
North Pole.
I'm obviously not a geologist.
Last question for me. What's the most unhealthy food that you like to eat?
Well, you know, let me tell you, I can give you a very candid question on that. You know, I'm a colorectal cancer survivor, so I have to be very careful what I eat, you know. And I miss unhealthy food so bad, so bad. So thanks to my guiding light, which is my wife, I eat very healthy now. But I miss two things really bad. I miss unhealthy food and sweets. I still eat a little bit, but not as much. And I miss alcohol, to be honest with you. I can't drink much alcohol. And I used to be a pretty good drinker. But I can't do that as much anymore. A couple glasses of wine once in a while. So.
You have time for a couple of questions?
I sure do. I'd love to.
Questions?
Questions, comments, concerns, issues?
So to use your language, if you're a startup, more of an innovator than an entrepreneur, what does TEDCO offer that kind of person?
Very good question. You know, we have to develop more entrepreneurship. There's a lot of innovation in this state, particularly given the pedigree at the academic level and the institutional level. And we have to develop more entrepreneurship. So first of all, I'd love to teach innovators to be more entrepreneurs. So we need to do more of that schooling and training and teaching to do that. But we also got to connect entrepreneurs and innovators together. Right? Sometimes they're in one. Don't get me wrong. A lot of times they show up and they're great. But by default, innovators and entrepreneurs are pretty smart people. You know, if you give them the tools they need, they're usually going to be successful and figure it out. You don't have to hold their hand. But you know, things like we do now, which are very static, like our loan executive program and things like that, where we actually place somebody with you that we pay for, that gives you that expert team from a CIO or CFO or CTO perspective. But we want to connect and hook them up and recruit. So I think it's a combination of, can we train you? Can we help you through schooling and mentoring programs? Or can we develop a suite and a plethora of entrepreneurs who want to work closer with innovators to do the next model of taking it towards a business model. I was down in Salisbury University last week. I hadn't been down there a long time. And they have this really cool entrepreneurial center there. And they're doing no heavy research down there. They're scientists. You know, I came across a company like this called Picklehead. Right? And I couldn't wait to get down there and find out what Picklehead was. Well, it turns out it's a family and their son, who was 13 years old, invented this product that saves people from cutting their hands when they're chefs and things, cutting food. It's this little thing that goes over your fingers, you hold it down. They've sold like 10,000 units. They're going on the TV show, the QBO, whatever it is. Yeah. And it was really fascinating. This little family had put this thing together, but they didn't understand things like IP and management and putting all that together. So we've been helping them, and this institute's been helping them down there. But I looked there and I met a bunch of young people who had been through this program, and they kind of got it, you know, about how to build a business, do things. I said, we need to connect you with some of these scientists I'm working with to partner up to figure out how to put a business model together. So I think there's a couple paths there. Hopefully we can train you. If not, we can connect you with the resources you need to get there. Good question. Okay?
Any other questions?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. George? Now for the, you know, I love having people like George be our fireside chat guest. He makes my job so much easier. Anyway, this is the part of the program that I really love, and that is what we do here as a chapter is we bring in and feature a local young startup from the mid-Maryland area. And what we do is, I call it our community problem-solving forum. And what we do is we bring up the young startup. They give a summary of how they got started, what the problem was, and bring us forward to where they are now. And then I ask them to share a problem, a challenge, an opportunity that they're struggling with in real time right now, and throw it out to the community and allow all of you the opportunity to provide feedback, so that when they leave here tonight, they will leave here a little more educated, a little more inspired, a little more connected, and they leave here with more value than when they arrived. And hopefully something tonight will help them take that next step in their entrepreneurship journey. So that having been said, I'm thrilled to be able to present this evening a TEDCO portfolio company, Linshom, with Ronen and, I'm sorry, Feldman of Linshom for Life. Come on up, gentlemen. So the way we're going to work this is I've asked them to, in a few minutes, kind of lay it out there. Tell us about the entrepreneurial journey that you guys have been on. How did it start? What problem was identified? What did you guys think you were going to be able to do to help solve that problem? Walk us through that process.
Great. Should we sit down?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Chris, and TEDCO for having us here today. We're very excited to be here. The name of our company is Linshom, and it means to breathe in Hebrew. And what we've developed is a medical device, a respiratory monitor. And before we go into what the motivation was for developing this monitor, I want to give a real quick history of where we started and where we are. So we were founded in 2009 by 2 anesthesiologists, a physicist, and 2 engineers. To date, we've managed to acquire 2 U.S. patents. We also have a patent in Canada and China, and we have IP PCT protection in Mexico, Brazil, the EU, India, and Japan. We've developed high-fidelity prototypes, electronics, software, and sensors. And being that we're a medical device, is we also have to get clinical data, third-party validation by research institutes to show that the claims we make are accurate and have been validated. So we've completed third-party validation at Harvard in their anesthesia department, at Cleveland Clinic in their GI department. We're still doing ongoing testing at Einstein Medical in Philadelphia in their ER department, and we just finished studies at University of Mississippi Medical Center. And so that's what we've done till now, some of the things. And what we're focused on now is, because we are a medical device, we have to get FDA regulatory approval. And to do that, we have to do a bunch of different testing. So currently we're doing what's called 6061 testing, and that's electrical testing where you do EMI, EMC, and safety testing of your electronics and software and sensor. And once you finish that, then you have a bunch of documentation that you submit to the FDA, hoping of getting regulatory approval. And that's where most of our energy is focused right now. So now I'll pass you on to Doron. He can tell you our motivation.
So although we were founded in 2009, the impetus for this device occurred about 10 years before that. I was working as an anesthesiologist, and an 18-month-old baby that was transported by one of my colleagues to the emergency room was discovered not to be breathing when he arrived in the emergency room. This is a perfectly healthy young child for hernia surgery, and he was blue upon arrival. A resuscitation started, but unfortunately the child didn't do well at all because so much time has passed from when he stopped breathing, and he ended up with severe brain injuries. Fast forward to 2009, I was sitting in the operating room with another patient that was having some respiratory difficulties, but I was with him and was fully monitored, and I was very easily able to deal with that situation. But I started thinking again about that case and the implications to the child, the family, society, and so on. The reason for that is that outside of the operating room, there's no respiratory monitors that are commonly used. So I called up Ronen, who's an engineer, and I kind of ran this by him. And he and I spoke quite a bit about it, and he had a team put together with another engineer, and then we had a physicist and one of my anesthesia colleagues. And we came up with this device that is really revolutionary in allowing us to monitor patients' respiration. And we could do it, forget about the OR, because there's already capnography, which is mandated, which measures how much carbon dioxide you produce. But outside of the OR, as I said before, there's no respiratory monitoring, whether it's in the recovery room, on the floor. If you go get a colonoscopy, almost nobody monitors it. Ambulances, emergency rooms, and so on and so forth. So we came up with this device that we're going to demonstrate for you shortly. And that was the impetus for how we came about with this.
So there's nothing on the market now that does what you are working to do. Am I correct?
Yes and no. So there are devices that do measure respiration, but they're not used. And they're not used because of a lot of reasons. They're cumbersome, they're expensive, there's motion artifact, they don't give you accurate data, they only give you partial data, and they're just so impractical that although in theory, in a laboratory situation, they might be effective, in real life, they're not effective, so people don't use them. And there's the fact that there's no mandates actually for respiratory monitoring outside of the OR is indicative of the fact that there's just no technology that could meet this mandate.
Let's talk about market acceptance. You've had some, from what I can research, you've had some pretty phenomenal success in third-party studies and validation at a number of highly prestigious institutions and facilities. What is the industry telling you right now? What is your customer discovery telling you right now?
So the physicians that tested our device were very impressed with it. Actually, quite a few of them asked if they could invest in our company. So we've had success in each and every site where we've conducted our studies, and anyone who sees it, and I think as you will see shortly, it's self-evident that this works. A problem with industry is that we've had an issue getting to industry. We've approached quite a few companies, and we've not been able to get through that door. And I don't really know what the reason is, whether it's, well, we don't have FDA approval yet. We're applying for FDA approval, as Ronen said, late February, early March, and we fully expect to get it. But that has really been finding a strategic partner that's open to taking risk with a device such as ours has been really our main issue.
Okay. How long do you think it's going to take to get FDA approval?
We're going to, as I said, apply for FDA approval end of February, March, with the help of TEDCO, and we very much appreciate that. They've really been a huge help for us. It should take about 6 months, give or take, to get FDA approval. There usually is some kind of back and forth with them. It's a bit nebulous initially when you apply for FDA approval, what is it that they want? But once you get the feedback, then you have a roadmap to achieve it. There's a few predicate devices that we're going to use, so we really believe that 6 months, outside range 9 months, we'll get FDA approval.
Now, during the time that you are working on the FDA approval, what's on the drawing boards? What is your plan to go from today through to the point where you get the FDA approval? What are you doing to build out your infrastructure?
Okay, so that kind of leads us into the question you asked, you said you were going to ask, as far as where do we see us needing support or help? So we've been trying to be extremely honest with ourselves as far as what are strong points and what are weak points. So as far as knowing what the device has to do from a medical standpoint, that's one of our strong points, because we have anesthesiologists who are experts in respiratory management. So we know the kind of data product that our monitor needs to produce. As far as building the monitor, that also we have under control. We have our background actually in building instruments. We've built instruments for research institutions, the team that we've assembled for 30 years, where we've built instruments for specific tasks to produce specific data sets, and we know how to do that. We know how to design, we know how to build, we know how to calibrate and characterize and test instruments and do the validation. But once you have that instrument, and then you need to do that next step, sort of get a market-ready product where you got to do the industrial engineering, where you need to go ahead and do understand sales, production, distribution. That is not our strong point, and we realize that. So really, as we're moving towards waiting for the 510(k) or working toward that, the question becomes, do we look for a strategic partner, which we think would be ideal, someone who already brings that skill set to our team, and we can team up and get the product moving forward. But if we're not successful with that, then what we would need to do is we need to kind of do that, push the technology further on our own. And for that, we would do a market survey and a market study to see, of all the different places where we think our device could be used, where exactly would be the best entry point for us to start off with, understand that entry point, understand the cost, the financials, and use that information to approach investors to get the appropriate money for that task.
Okay, so right now, as we sit here today, your big problem is what? Or your big problems, how's that?
Right. I would say that if we could find the strategic partner who sees what we have and their synergy in what they do and what we do, I think finding that partner right now would be our #1 task, which we would like to do first.
You are going to demonstrate here.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I think the community is going to find it very, very interesting to be able to see what it is we're talking about. So
Thank you. So let me go real quickly over what is currently available as far as respiratory monitoring. And the respiratory monitor we developed can be used on It can be used at home for children if you're worried about SIDS, military applications, ambulances, getting colonoscopies. Anywhere we go outside of the operating room where capnography is mandated, it could be used. Capnography, as I said, measuring end-tidal CO2, the CO2 that we breathe because of metabolism, heart rate, and so on, has a lot of issues with it. One of the main ones is, other than being expensive and cumbersome and motion artifact, it doesn't measure tidal volume. That tidal volume is how deep the breath is. Because not only is the rate important, and if you stop breathing, but the quality of the breath. Is it a small breath? Is it a large breath? There's a lot of clinical implications. Some companies have tried other devices. Massimo, which is a huge company that does pulse oximetry, which measures your saturation, not respiration, developed a device which is an acoustic monitor. It's ingenious. They have a tape that goes on your neck and comes across, and it's got directional microphones, and it listens for your breath. Well, it's wonderful, it's brilliant, it just doesn't work. Because if you're breathing, if you're talking, there's a generator going outside, the TV's on, you get garbage. There's one other company called Respiratory Motion Inc., and they put a sort of tape around your chest. As your chest goes in and out, the impedance changes, and you can measure impedance changes, which you correlate with respiration. So your chest goes up, chest goes down, impedance changes, and you can monitor that. The problem is, if you're obstructed, let's say I'm choking you, your chest goes up and down, impedance changes, you see that, but there's no airflow. Also, it's cumbersome if you shiver, some people, because of body habitus, women, for privacy reasons, if you have chest surgery, you really cannot apply a tape easily for that. So what we have is a device, and what I'm going to ask Ronen to do is put it on, and I'm going to tell him how to breathe, unless one of you guys want to do that. But he's going to put it on, and what you see on the top here, you'll see the breaths per minute, and you'll see the relative tidal volume, which is how deep the breath is, on the bottom. And I have a child who's asthmatic. I don't know if anybody else here has a family member who's asthmatic. But asthma is something where this could come in be very valuable. Because when you have asthma, it's hard to breathe out. You can breathe in fairly well, but breathing out is like breathing through a straw. And when people have asthma, they breathe very rapidly because each breath is very small and they're trying to kind of get air exchange. And they breathe so fast that after a while they kind of poop out and they stop breathing and get respiratory arrest, which is an obvious emergency. Before they have respiratory arrest, their respiratory rate starts slowing down. They're starting to tire out. But, I'm a really great physician. I treated them. Is the respiratory rate going down because I'm a great physician, or is it because they're about to poop out? Well, the tidal volume tells the story. If they're about to poop out, they still have a very shallow, sawtooth type of respiratory pattern. On the other hand, if they're doing better, you see larger and larger tidal volumes as their airway expands. So I'm going to ask Ronen to initially...
Let me just before we do that, just to show you that our monitor is actually relatively small. I can't pick it up here. It's about the size of a smartphone. This is all the technology is in here. And then we have a small sensor that we put into a mask just so we can breathe into it. And we're just using the laptop right now just for display purposes so we can hook into so everybody can see it. And then we're just streaming the data to the laptop, and all the laptop does is collects the data and displays it.
Yeah, and we have a really slick monitor that we're in the final stages of constructing, as well as a slick sensor. There's going to be a disposable and non-disposable component, and it's going to be a proprietary mask. The whole thing's going to fit together in a very slick fashion. This is really what we use mostly for the research and for the development part. So Ronen's going to put the mask on his face, and he's going to start breathing normally. And you can see immediately that there's a respiratory rate. And the respiratory rate immediately shows up. So we very quickly give you what the rate is. You can see that over there. So now what I'm going to ask him to do is start breathing very rapidly to, let's say, simulate like that patient we spoke of that might have asthma. And you see very quickly that the respiratory rate has gone up. You have that sawtooth type of respiratory pattern. And the tidal volume, which you see down here also, has gone down. But you can also visually see how the tidal volume has gone down. And having this display has a lot of clinical implications because you can look at the inspiratory and expiratory phases on this, and that can give you a lot of clinical information. So before Ronen passes out, I'm going to ask him to stop breathing. And this is going to simulate lack of breathing apnea. Let's say you have a child, when my children were born, my wife and I would just sit there and watch them all the time, make sure they're breathing. And this is something that could very easily be applied to a newborn child. So now he stopped breathing. And just to demonstrate to you, if you look here on the left, he runs a marathon, he's fine. So if you look on the left, that's a very small tidal volume. I'm going to ask him to start taking really nice, deep respirations, like like that swimmer, what's that from here? Phelps. So you can see immediately that not only does the display show you the deep respiratory pattern, the tidal volumes, but also the number on the lower side. Now, none of the other monitors available really give you this type of information. They will give you respiratory rate. They will show apnea. You can breathe normally again, please. They will show you apnea, but they'll not give you tidal volume. Now, this is something that works off a battery, basically, a laptop, anything like that. So you imagine in the developing world, the implications of having a device such as this. If you combine this with a pulse ox, which, as I said, measures saturation, and you have a respiratory monitor such as this, the improvement in healthcare in South America, Africa, India, places like that, could be tremendous. And again, it could be used in ambulances, anywhere from out the hospital to in the hospital, from the hospital itself outwards, clinics, oral surgery. There's a limitless number of applications for a respiratory monitor such as this. That's very inexpensive, portable, just put it on the face, in front of the face. It could be in a nasal cannula, it could be in a mask, it could be by itself. You don't even need any of them. You can just tape it over your lip and you'll get this information. So this is really what we've developed, and it's taken us quite a while. We have, as we said, strong patent protection. We finished our third-party validation, and we're about to go to the FDA, and we're fairly confident, and also after talking to the experts at TEDCO, that we are going to get this fairly easily FDA approval.
Okay, so the problems and the challenges and where you would like help is A, strategic partnerships. Finding the right partner who brings to the table the kinds of manufacturing, production, advanced engineering that can take, I'll call it from the lab scale to the production floor, but also bring in the resources to be able to market it, distribute it, that type of thing. Am I close to being accurate there?
So I mean, and I'll start, please, and then Ronan's going to finish. So I look at it as we have two, like Plan A and Plan B. Up to now, we've done this on our own until we met with TEDCO. Then the initial individuals who started this put over $1.4 million of our own money into this because we believe in it, and it's the way it should be. Until we met with TEDCO, and they gave us a grant and then seed funding as well. And we're at the stage now that there's going to be two paths. Either we're going to get a strategic partner, which is Plan A. That's what we prefer to do. But barring that, we will want to take this to market ourselves. And that's a whole different, slew of issues and skill sets we don't have and so on. So based on which way we head, we'll need different types of help.
Okay. All right. The floor is open. Please ask questions, clarifying questions. What don't you understand? What can each of you bring to the table to help them?
Yes, sir.
What's the target price?
So it depends if it's going to be a freestanding device or it's going to be on a monitor. But we think that to manufacture, and we're talking about Maryland, which is fairly expensive, it's not offshore, the sensor with mask together should be well under $3 to manufacture.
This is for the sensor.
The
This is
sensor.
The disposable part.
Yeah.
And then it really depends on.
No, go ahead, please.
So if, let's say, a lot of the monitors out there are actually multi-parameter monitors, where they share a lot of the processing and the display, and then they have add-on monitors. So if we were an add-on monitor, clearly that would be a lot less expensive. So just ballpark, the board that would have to go in to the multi-parameter monitor, we've done some estimates, and that's using board houses in Maryland, where we do the PC cards in Maryland, we do the assembly in Maryland, and so forth. We're thinking somewhere around $475, something like that.
And capnography, a capnography monitor is between $3,500 to $5,000. Just to give you the scale, I mentioned respiratory motioning. They're between $5,000 and $8,000 just for the monitor, and $25 to $30 for each sensor. So I think we're going to be very price competitive. Yes, sir.
Not being glib, have you talked to Apple?
I'm sorry?
I'm not being glib, have you talked to Apple?
So funny you should say that. The individual that used to be the chief medical officer at Masimo, which is this multi-billion-dollar pulse oximetry company, ended up going to Apple to become their chief medical officer. Apple actually has one. And I know
They
him.
released their first cleared device.
Right, I saw that. And we spoke to him, and he at the time told us that Apple is not looking at medical devices. I spoke to him a year and a half or 2 years ago. So I don't know if that's changed, but I did see that. We have sent out many feelers to Google and to Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic and GE and so
Right, so the
on.
truth is, we've actually tried to talk to a lot of the big players. Some we've had a little bit of discussion going back and forth, but it's very hard, it seems, to get the right person in these big companies and actually get their time.
So the other suggestion is the company that has the approved device that Apple is in bed with, go to them, because they've walked down the Apple pathway.
Do you have any contacts with them?
No.
See, because cold calling and getting it's very difficult. They're so risk averse. It's you need a matchmaker, somebody that really knows them.
I've had good success with getting in touch with Apple's business side through the store. So that each one of the stores has a manager specifically for business applications. They're not the consumer goods. So
We could try. I mean, try. Yes, sir.
Are you guys familiar with Benchworks in like the Annapolis, like Eastern Shore area? They specialize in bringing a lot of different medical-related products to market. So, like Vyvanse, for example, they did the entire marketing campaign and go-to-market strategy. And so they're expanding into the medical device space as well. But it might be a great opportunity because they also have a supply and distribution asset, if you will, that is spread across the country. That can also, help you tap into those different markets and get you to distribution.
We'd be glad to talk to them.
Yeah.
We're not familiar with them, but if you can,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned predicate devices, so I'm assuming you're going with a 510K route.
Correct.
Right.
So if there are people or there are companies already out in the market and you have patent protection, why aren't you licensing what you said to? Because building out your own distribution is going to be freakishly expensive.
Correct, and so you're right, so what we would like is once we get, so we've talked, we would like to get 510K, and then if we could team up, that's kind of what our idea of a strategic partner, somebody who's already doing this, to team up with them, would be the way we think is the simplest way to get it out there, yes.
Yeah. And the predicate devices, although we use them because we tested against them to show that we're effective in respiration, we're actually more effective. We've shown that we're actually more effective and more accurate and more on time than they are, but we're using them as the predicate device. One of them is capnography to show the respiratory rate. We have another ventilatory machine that's going to show the tidal volume, and because it's a temperature-based device, thermistors have been used in the medicine quite a bit, so they're safe. So for safety, we're probably going to use another one. So you can use a combination of different, although it's different technology, it does the same thing. You can use it as a predicate for your own technology. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say you guys did a great job. It's great seeing you guys again. We operate a production product development company, and we spoke before. Again, I was wondering if there's anything as far as your displays or the units go. I'd love to see if there's something we can help you guys out with as far as doing either small orders to large production orders, kind of what we specialize in before that mass production. Move forward. So I'd love to see what you guys
Thank
do.
you.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, I remember you from the expo.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a few questions. I'm assuming that you had a pre-submissions meeting with the FDA, so you have a clear path in terms of what you need to do for your 510K?
We've not had a pre-submission meeting with them yet. We have, through TEDCO, we have help through TEDCO getting the tech file ready. We're going here to Med Labs to get all the safety and everything else going. And once we have all that together, we'll follow whatever instructions we get, whether to try to get a pre-submission meeting or to make the application, then wait for the responses, so then we can adjust based on that. Again, this is the first time we've ever tried to go through the
Because
FDA.
when I work with companies, essentially, really encourage them to have a pre-submissions meeting early so they know exactly how to develop the product and what route to go to
Right.
and what the predicate devices would be and what information they're looking for.
Right.
Another question I have is.
So how do you go about doing that?
Let me just elaborate.
sorry.
So we're part of the MD PACE program here through TEDCO, and we've actually have a gentleman assigned to us who's gone through this process several times, and he's given us the guidance and given us, kind of helping us navigate the different requirements as far as risk mitigation and all the documents you need for like software verification, validation, and that stuff. So we are doing that.
Yeah, there's a form online that you can get, and also you request a meeting with them. And so they're really willing to work with a lot of these
Okay.
companies, and you can have a lot of back and forth with them. So they work very closely to make sure you're on the right path, so that when you submit everything, that you're not essentially going in a different direction than what they want. Another question I have too is, in terms of a lot of the medical device companies, they do have venture groups. Have you reached out to any of them?
ma'am?
Venture group.
They have venture groups.
Yes, we have. If we go online to a lot of them, they do have that area, and I've contacted well over 20 of them. I think I got 1 or 2 responses back. I don't know who there vets them. I don't know what it takes to move it to the next level. They probably get a lot of emails and a lot of ideas, and again, it depends on who's the one doing the triage. And so far,
We have had
Yeah.
some luck with GE. They have the 5A program, which I don't know if you've heard of that.
I know GE. I used to be at Abbott Labs, so there's
Okay.
someone that's actually the chief scientific officer over at GE that actually encouraged me to, for one of the companies I was working with, to look for their ventures. And
Okay.
also Abbott has a venture group too. And I also know of the medical officer that was at Senseonics here and that's developed the, for the diabetes test. Actually, he's over at Apple too. So
Okay.
maybe some-
All right, so we have had some success with GE with the 5A program, where they originally, they thought that we were not at the level that they would be interested in, because they wanted to get through the regulatory path.
Right.
But they transferred us to a company in India, because they thought that we might be applicable to their needs, where they're looking for 80% of the people there live below the poverty line, and they're looking for specific technologies that could help those people. And we had a bunch of correspondences with them, presentation and demo, and they were actually very impressed with what we had. The issue is that their charter states that we have to be an India-based company. So what they did is they actually pushed it back to GE, and they said, hey, you guys need to take a second look at them. And so we're actually talking to GE right now, but I'm not sure how far that's going to go.
yes, sir.
I may have missed it. How much money are you trying to raise?
That's a good question.
So that really depends on, so as
Plan A or
we're,
Plan B?
yes, well, exactly. So
Right.
if we go
Okay.
with Plan B, we're going to do the
Ballpark.
market. So we actually met with the gentleman last week who's going to help us do the market survey and market analysis, and that will determine what the first amount of money that we will try to look at, depending on which niche in the market, in other words, which application we want to pursue. And so unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you right now.
Yes, sir.
Have you looked into getting regulatory approvals overseas?
Yes.
Before FDA?
We will get one in Europe as well.
Yeah, so we're actually.
Well, I mean, even
The
prior
CE mark?
to,
Get this-
prior
well-
to FDA.
No, we're going to try to, we're doing the testing, the electrical, the 6061 testing to CE standards, get a CE mark, but we're applying to the FDA, not
And the CE mark is equivalent in Europe of what the FDA is here.
Have you looked at reimbursement in terms of it? I know it would be within the hospital as well under DRG and as well as outpatient, what the reimbursement
Yes,
would be?
we spoke to a lady actually through TEDCO, who, when we get to that stage, said she'd be more than happy to consult with us to see how we could get, so we're on, to get reimbursement through insurance companies, through CMS and so on for the device. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that this technology is used in the operating room commonly? Is that what
Not
you said?
this technology, capnography, measuring end-tidal CO2, the carbon dioxide that you exhale.
Okay. But outside of the operating room, this data is not accessible in any way typically?
Well, no, it can be used. Sometimes it's used in intensive care units. It's used very hit or miss, again, because it's just not that accurate. It doesn't give you tidal volume, which we said was very important.
If you have a very small baby, the amount of air that they produce is so small, it gets diluted. Because it's about 180 cc's per minute of air that has to be drawn through that tube to the gas analyzer. So you get very inaccurate results. It's a big, heavy, cumbersome. If you're like EMT and you're running to a side and somebody's just had a cardiac arrest, you can't take it with you. It just doesn't work.
So my question is more of a marketing one, that outside of those areas that you said are being addressed, it's not like there's nothing available, so nobody's looking for it.
Well, that's one of the issues. I mean, think about, we have this huge opioid epidemic right now. Patients come in by the droves to the emergency rooms, and they get reversed with something called Narcan. Narcan is what reverses opioids. The problem is that the half-life, or how long that medication works, is much shorter than many of the narcotics that people ingest. So you can reverse them, you can give them Narcan, and they stop breathing, and they're fine for 30, 45 minutes, but then they kind of tail off again, stop breathing, and have cardiac and respiratory arrest. The thing is, the ER is so busy, and they get shoved with a gurney to the side, nobody's really measuring respiration. By the time they get to them, tragic things happen.
Okay.
So this would be, people get sent to radiology to have a study done. Who's monitoring them? There's all these things and all these sites where there's no respiratory monitoring, and people in the community just assume, well, of course they're measuring if I'm breathing or not. Well, actually, no, they're not, because there's no technology that meets that need.
It sounds like you're saying that emergency response is going to be the first adopters of this.
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Okay. One final comment, question.
So it seems to me a lot of what you guys are doing is based on alerting physicians as to something happening to their patient. Have you considered looking and partnering with the Maryland EICU program that they are already doing for telemedicine in, I think, 6 or 7 rural hospitals in Maryland, and perhaps partnering your sensors into what they're already using to monitor patients remotely? Because if it's a detection system, it might be something to be interested in incorporating into what they're doing.
No, we've not that specifically, but you're absolutely right. I'll give you one last example because I know time is short. There's about 1 million firefighters in this country. Firefighters that end up dying, the majority of them die from getting heart attacks. They don't die from smoke inhalation, they don't die from the fire or from something falling on them. They're fat, middle-aged guys like me with about 70 pounds of equipment that run into a fire full of adrenaline and they get a heart attack. Now, part of having a cardiac event or respiratory event can be detected with a respiratory monitor. Something such as this in their mask that's being transmitted to a central location can alert people that, hey, Joe over there is having a trouble, let's go get him real quick. Because in the heat of the moment and all that, what's going on, that's what happens, So there's a multitude of applications for this in different sites, different locations, different countries, different healthcare, technological wherewithals, and we think this really can meet quite a need.
Okay. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, suggestions, or possible connections to resources that could help these gentlemen move forward, please feel free to connect with them after the meeting, or you can contact me and I can put you in touch with them and see what we can do to help move these guys forward as quickly as we possibly can. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the show for tonight. And I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for celebrating with us our first Christmas holiday. And in the spirit of giving, we are going to raffle off, draw for 3 complimentary future Startup Grind event passes. So, Joe, come here. Where's Joe? Oh, wrong Joe, but no, I'm Joe. Yeah, come forward. TEDCO.
All right.
All right. Josh Smith. Is Josh here? He left.
Hey, he is a founder track.
That's true. Brad Hennessy. Is Brad here? I look forward to seeing you an event soon. Thank you. Sean Higgins.
Hey. There he is. He's all the best.
I look forward to seeing you soon. And the last one. I believe it's, I'm going to butcher this, I know I am, Serini Gorantala? I'm sorry. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I wish you all the happiest of holidays. Have a safe and wonderful holiday. Drive safely when you leave here. And I hope that when you go tonight, you leave a little more educated, a little more inspired, and a little more connected than when you walked in. If you do, then I've accomplished my mission. Thanks everybody and have a good evening.